And now I'm pleased to introduce our next panel, Public-Private Partnerships, Scaling Opportunities, Solutions, and Impact. And moderating this discussion is Victor Arias, founder and CEO of, I love this title, Encantado Advisors, and a fellow advisory board member. Victor brings decades of experience in executive recruitment, having held leadership roles at Korn Ferry and other top firms. He has served on numerous boards, including Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen, the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and LBAN, or Latino Business Action Network, which collaborates with Stanford University on the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative. Please join me in welcoming Victor Arias.
Thank you, brother. Well, you're in for a treat because everything that we've heard today leads into what this is about. And so, but let me first introduce the panelists. So we come up here, please, for me. And Marla Bolanek first. She's the CEO of NELCAB. And then I'm going to introduce then also Horacio Mendez, who's the CEO of Woodstock Institute. And then Andy Navarrete, who's the EVP for Capital One. Thank you. Look, we've heard a lot about, we started off talking about, just the challenges in the community, the data that was given by McKinsey about Latino entrepreneurs. We've talked about the resources and the impact that the government can provide, like the SBA. We saw an example of the impact that Raza Development Fund or CDFIs in general can make on the community. Now I think, and also education, what a tremendous panel. Let's give them a round of applause because that's where the future is education. Just like education, this next topic is about a very innovative and creative solution to how we can build power in the communities. And as, it's public-private partnerships. And all these panelists here have experience in how to put these kinds of deals together and collaborations together. So I guess I'd like to open this up by just having you each talk about, maybe even integrate what your communities or your businesses are about, as it relates to what you think the future holds for the Latino communities in general, given the political climate that we are in. But what does this mean for your organizations and for this particular solution? So Marla, I'll start with you.
Sure. And I just want to preface sort of the work that my organization does because we are actually supporting the groups that are on the ground. So I actually spent the last decade before I joined NELCAB 4 years ago running a local community development financial institution. And now I'm on the other side of the table supporting the largest network of Latino-led CDFIs and nonprofits in the economic development space that represent organizations in every Latino community. I like to say we're in every neighborhood where you know Latinos are, and many where you would be surprised to find out that there are Latinos even in Montana, every state, even Hawaii. And so, for me, I think what's very interesting, you heard Julian say that 2% of Latino organizations 2% of philanthropy goes to Latino-led organizations, and we've found that to be the case with our organizations, whether it's philanthropy, whether it's federal funding, whether it's, just the whole sort of landscape of opportunity. And so I feel like what we're working to do is address what I call the organizational wealth gap. Everything that you see on the ground with, challenges access to capital, challenges with sort of breaking barriers into traditional institutions exists in the nonprofit sector, exists in the Latino nonprofit sector. So while I'm concerned about anti-DEI efforts, I do think there's still opportunity. I feel very energized and driven to sort of continue to push through those barriers for ourselves. I mean, even my own organization struggles with this and the organizations that we represent.
Thank you, Marla. You've done tremendous work with NELCAB. Horacio, how about you with Woodstock?
Well, Woodstock unfortunately exists because of the fact that the financial industry doesn't really work for everybody. We were founded 53 years ago, actually by the owners of Manpower Incorporated. Anybody remember them?
Oh, yeah.
The temp agency? Yeah. Mm-hmm. They were a little bit frustrated during the civil rights movement that there was an awful lot of talk, but not a real bridge to the lived experience of the people that the civil rights movement was supposed to be representing. We helped in the passage of a number of laws to be able to provide data on what financial institutions do, including the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act. We coined the phrase redlining. Actually, the person that coined that just passed away a couple weeks ago. I was at his funeral 2 days ago in Chicago, Frank McKnight. And passed a law, wrote and passed a law actually in Woodstock, Illinois. Unfortunately, we're not named after the concert. That would have been so much cooler. But passed a law requiring financial institutions to reinvest in their community, called the Community Reinvestment Act, which is one of the reasons why we're here today, which gave us the leverage to be able to negotiate with financial institutions at their time of need, which is when they want to buy somebody else. But the reality is that things haven't progressed the way that we wanted them to from all of these laws and regulations. I love and hate political season because you always have these people talking soft on crime issues. I think of so many of the laws that are meant to be able to help Latinos, African Americans, and others as being the poster child for soft on crime. Because there are so many laws in place to prevent so much behavior that we see every day that it almost seems ridiculous that we just seem to ignore them out of hand and allow these practices to continue. That's one of the reasons why the Woodstock Institute has to continue to be in place, because we hold the industry, the government, and others accountable for what we all know is behavior that's good for everybody, but for some reason doesn't really speak to our better angels when implemented into practice.
Great. Well, thank you, Horacio, for all that you do. I've been to Woodstock, Illinois, by the way.
What?
Yeah, I lived in Chicago. Andy, you sit in a different chair than these two other colleagues. What is your take on that question about the Latino community and what we said?
Sure, and I like to think of it as a complementary chair. Like many of you, I'm the son of immigrants. My parents emigrated just shortly after the revolution in Cuba. And it was interesting to listen to a quote from John F. Kennedy earlier. The quote that sticks with me was his promise to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. I will tell you, for my parents, the goal was a little bit more modest, which was a mortgage by the end of the decade. And one of the things that struck me about the earlier conversation that we had was the importance of ecosystems. But when we talk about ecosystems, we've been talking now about what I think are 2 or 3 steps into the process. Small businesses looking for investment capital. Thinking about seats at very, very important tables around a number of different institutions. But one of the things that drew me to Capital One and to financial institutions was that we have a very, very strong heritage of having built a business model around underserved communities. Our first product was what we called our Main Street credit card, which was one of the first efforts to put this incredibly important payment tool and borrowing tool, liquidity tool, into the hands of people who had been shut out of the traditional banking system for decades. And so when we think about the kind of ecosystem that we need to build in order to make private partnerships work, in order to build wealth within the Latino community, I want to start at that modest place. It would have helped my parents enormously to have had a credit card to build a credit history that then would have allowed them to eventually build to something as important as a mortgage. Every opportunity with credit is an important one and a significant one, but very few people's first experience with credit is a mortgage or a small business loan, much less a commercial loan. And so from our perspective, one of the ways that we like to work with Woodstock on advocacy, with NowCap on supporting CDFIs, is about helping people understand what those building blocks are. I now have committed to reading the McKinsey study because it struck me, this sort of observation about people's negative experiences with financial institutions. I will tell you, we will be doing our community a grave disservice if we allow that to persist as a viewpoint. We need to be working collectively to encourage individuals in this community to avail themselves of the traditional financial services industry and the banking industry, because it is essential if we're going to achieve the broader and longer term goals that we want to achieve.
Great, thank you, Eddie. Yeah, what else?
Yeah, to build off of that and to also leverage some of the stuff, some of the comments that were made earlier, and I apologize if I kind of faded in and out. I had food poisoning 2 nights ago, and I haven't really eaten in 2 days. So this is not the great way to lose weight before the holidays. But this could either work well, or it could be a Latino version of Chappelle shows when keeping it real goes bad.
Oh, goodness.
So, but the issue there, and let me frame it by telling a personal story. So, when we moved back to this country from Argentina, I was in 3rd grade, and I get introduced to my 3rd grade class as Horacio Mendez, and there was some snickering. And the teacher, I still remember her name, Mrs. Evans, was trying to get the class to pronounce the name Horacio. And I think the kids are just deliberately mispronouncing it and laughing. So then she turns to me, and she says, well, do you have a middle name? I say, Federico. And then she looks at me and says, is that Fred? No, there's Federico and there's Federico. There's a difference.
Yes.
But at that point, I'm sweating. I'm nervous. I don't fit the box. So for the better part of my life, people knew me as Fred. I got renamed. I mean, it's bad enough being a Latino that looks like Wally Cleaver, but I have to go with Fred too? I'm like, geez, talk about 2 strikes against you. But there's a lens in this country that you have to be seen through. And if you don't really fit that lens, you're out of focus. And I think the Latino community, as well as other communities here, they don't fit that focus. So as a result, you end up kind of having an idea about what somebody looks like, but the lens isn't proper. You're not truly in focus. When you think about the systems in this country of healthcare, of education, San Jose State grad over here, of education, and of the financial industry, the fastest growing portion of this country is out of focus. Now let me tell you two quick examples of how I've been able to see this in action. I'm going to date myself here. I used to run the bond trading desk for a large bank. We used to take your mortgages, packages them, and then sell them out in the private market. Or in some cases to Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. So here comes this guy from Santa Rosa who has this new idea. He's from Fair Isaacs. It's like, hey, we got a credit score. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. What is that going to do? Oh, it's going to help you speed up how many mortgages you're going to be able to originate. Now, my chief credit officer and my CEO love that idea. I'm thinking to myself, okay, great, but what's the catch? There's always a catch. And it's like, yeah, well, they have to fit this box. It's like, okay, great. Let me take a look at my portfolio and see how many people fit that box from the people that we're originating loans to right now. And we have a very good, conservative, well-performing portfolio. Over a third of the originations that we originate to in terms of mortgages in Northern California would not have fit that box. I'm like, I don't think it's worth it. Of course, because we have shareholders that want us to do things efficiently, the default was, let's go with FICO. Guess what population was in that third? Yeah. So it's not that we never fit the box. Is that when the financial industry was more relationship-based, where you got to meet people when you knew them, when your kids went to school together, you went to the same church, the underwriting was different. The next piece is ag lending. So I was an executive for a European bank that did an awful lot of ag lending, actually the largest ag lender in the world. And we did a lot of dairy. And the Dutch, who I worked for, are pretty good at financing dairies. But it didn't fit the regulatory box of what our regulators and our government thought was safe and sound. So we got called to Washington, D.C. And we have an agency of the Department of Treasury saying, you're doing this wrong. And my CEO was standing and saying, we've been doing it for 270 years profitably. What you don't know about the dairy industry could fill volumes. And he turned to me like, Americans don't know how to bank. They just have these boxes that they underwrite to. And it doesn't matter who's in it or who's out of it. If you're in it, you're lucky. If you're out of it, you're screwed. So those two examples really show what it means when you're not in focus. That's why it's so important for these types of engagements where we can try to get a little bit more of a focus in the right kind of populations through NowCap, through myself, and in partnership with institutions like Capital One. Yeah. That's why it's so important for these partnerships to work well, because the default is you're out of focus, dude.
Well, that's where you bring up some really good points. I will also tell you that I was renamed myself, but I can't share any of those names in front of everybody. So, Marla, you all are on the front line of these public-private partnerships. Can you give us some examples of what you've done, how you've done it, and how it's happened?
Sure. So, while we were thinking about this panel, something that I wanted to highlight was sort of what makes for a good partnership or a successful partnership. And not just because he's on the stage here with me, but, I thought about Capital One, and I know we're going to get to the community benefits agreement. But there are certain elements of that relationship that I think are very difficult to replicate and that are very unique. And I think they apply to any sector of business. And I think just wanted to sort of run down the line to me of what has made this so successful and why, as a negotiator of the community benefits agreement, there was so much trust. So I'll start by saying that I have served on their Community Advisory Council for 11 years, and that started in my very first moment as a CEO of a local organization. So we've really grown up, or I've grown up with you guys. You guys were already grown-ups, and I just took a seat at the table. But we also got to know each other. I think it's really difficult to have a successful relationship where you don't know the other party. You don't care about what drives them, care about their priorities, understand sort of the motives behind what each party is doing. So I really feel that we have a very clear sort of understanding of that and the give and take. And also listening. I have really found Capital One and all successful partnerships to be one where there's an open line of communication, listening to sort of what the other person is bringing to the table, what they're worried about, what they're seeing on the ground in their community. And I have really found that to be the case and for all successful relationships, not just this one. And then lastly, and I think this is one that's particularly unique, is that all of these relationships typically center around a financial transaction. But what's interesting is that I've found Capital One takes a more traditional approach to investing where, typically equity investors not only make an investment, a financial investment, but also sort of get under the hood and try to help manage the organization and try to make sure, because they have now a vested interest in it succeeding, they want to make sure that, the operation and the management is on point. And I've found that partnership has brought more sort of that in-kind and expertise to our organization that we might not access elsewhere. So, I'll just give a very short example. I know we're coming up on time, but in my prior role, we acquired 2 smaller nonprofits. And anyone who works at a nonprofit, which I know many of you do and are working at nonprofits, know that you have the basic nuts and bolts of an organization, but you don't necessarily have like a chief marketing officer or some of these like C-suite level organizational functions. Capital One lent us a change management consultant. I'm not even sure that even like crossed our mind to have someone consult with us on that. And it was so critical. And to me, that's really getting under the hood, really investing in the success of the organization in addition to a financial contribution. So I think that's just extremely unique and wanted to sort of elevate that. But thank you, Victor.
That's a good example. But let's jump to the community benefits plan. Andy, can you talk a little bit about that and how this kind of come together and what it is?
No, yeah, absolutely. And Marla, thank you for the kind words. It's there's we talked in some of these panels about sort of the growing sense of division and confrontation, whatever that informs so much of our discourse. But at least within the realm of partnerships with community organizations, we kind of dismiss that out of hand as a business model. For decades, there's been a template for how banks engage with community activists in negotiating community benefits plans as part of large transactions. And that's generally been a confrontational model where, the two sides are kind of at loggerheads and one forces the other to acquiesce to some agreement, and then that comes out. And it's touted as a concession on the part of the bank and a victory on the part of the community activists. And our thought was like, why does that model need to exist? Banks have this obligation to give back to the community, which is kind of unique among industries, rooted in the Community Investment Act, or Reinvestment Act. And so our thought was, can we bring the same collaborative spirit that Marla was talking about to a process that's sorely in need of it? And so what we produced out of an extremely collaborative and constructive and unified process, including not only Marla's organization and Horacio's organizations, but the Opportunity Finance Network and NeighborWorks America, conveners of so many affiliates across the country, was the largest ever community benefits plan agreed to as part of a transaction. And it's $265 billion with a B, dollars, including over $200 billion in consumer lending. These are, what I was talking earlier, the building blocks of folks, own sort of financial journeys to set people in motion in a way that can allow them to aspire, to bigger and better things. Over $44 billion devoted to low-income housing tax credit supported affordable housing, as well as community development lending. Fun fact, Capital One is the #1 community development lender in the country in 5 of the last 6 years. That 6th year belonged to Chase, who was substantially larger than us, but we welcome the competition. $600 million, a 5x increase over our previous giving for CDFIs like Marla's organization. $15 billion devoted to small business lending, $5 billion to diverse suppliers, and we heard Comcast talk earlier about their supplier diversity company, and then almost $600 million in philanthropy. So while 2% may be the industry norm for the Latino community, I will tell you ours is substantially above that number, and something that we're quite proud of. So this is all, I'm looking at members of my team out there who led this effort. The next 5 years of your goals are laid out in a very, very sort of clear and concrete way, because this is something that we're absolutely committed to delivering on. But we're very, very excited to continue to deepen the incredibly constructive partnerships that we have built over the years.
Yeah, there are 3 things that are necessary in order for this to work, having been on both sides. Having had to negotiate when I was a bank executive, as well as now being on the other side of the fence. You have to have an open mind. As I said beforehand, the lens is out of focus, and to quote the other guy or paraphrase him, maybe we need our own fucking lens. Amen to that. And eventually there's gonna have to be one, right? I mean, we're the fastest growing segment of the population. At some point, we are going to be the majority. We should be the ones setting the rules, not accepting somebody else's rules for us. But there has to be a willingness to take a look at the way things are with the idea that I can actually embrace the process of creative destruction and still make my shareholders whole. So that's number 1. Number 2, you have to be talking to the right people. Influence matters. Talking to someone that does not have the ability to change corporate culture from the inside and have people follow them, you're wasting your time. And the third one actually is understanding. And I think what was really good in this group was you had people like Marla, like Harold Pettigrew from the Opportunity Finance Network, who really understand the nonprofit financial industry, CDFIs, and can really advocate for that. What I was looking at as a former banker, a former regulator, and now an advocate is, tell me about your business model. How do you make money? Now, how do we look at some of the processes you have? And how can we make little tweaks where it'll still perform well, you'll still be profitable, but you might mitigate harm, or you might open doors to more opportunity. And that's where sometimes you don't really have the ability to negotiate as a business person with another business person to make sure that what they walk out with isn't a commitment to just pull an Oprah, 10,000 for you, 10,000 for you, 10,000 for you. That doesn't help community. It may help some nonprofits, but that's not really dealing with a systemic issue. Dig into the nuts and bolts of how these organizations and corporations work, understand them, walk a mile in their shoes, and then you'll leave with something that may not be 100% of what you want, but if it's 60, it's 60 more than you would have gotten beforehand.
It's a great definition, but about partnership in many ways. But I'm going to throw it back to, I'll start with you, Andy. How do you define a good partner sitting as a financial institution looking at all the myriad of opportunities that there might be? How do you define a good partner for you?
Well, I think it starts with being a good partner. So I sort of turned a little bit of the obligation on us. And so, I mentioned a little bit about the origin story of Capital One having been built around, trying to innovate our way into a financial inclusion model. But while, that could have just been sort of the first step in a progression to a diversified institution that looks a lot like a lot of other banks, that sort of heritage continues to be the core of the business that we do. So, we have the fancy credit cards that get you lounge access, and we have commercial loans that support, global companies. But at the heart of what we do is still the community, is still serving, folks like my parents and probably many of you or your relatives. And so I start there only because I think it's extremely difficult to be a credible partner if you are doing this as an off the side of the desk activity, right? This cannot be when I sort of think about my team, we cannot be the department of do-gooders who kind of sits off divorced from the core of the mission and the strategy of the company. And so we come to this, as I said, authentically, because the people that we are looking to serve, that Marla and your organization serve, and Horacio, you and your organization serve, are actually our customers, right? They're not philanthropic projects. They are the people who form the strategic purpose and foundation of our company. And so I think coming to this conversation with that degree of authenticity, that degree of dot connecting, and recognition of the needs of the people that we are looking to serve can give us, perhaps more voice or a more credible voice when we're working with organizations who are steeped in the kinds of issues that we're trying to solve.
Great, thank you. And Marla, I'll give you a shot at that one too. What defines a
Well,
good partner?
just something that I realized, and we're so short on time, but I just wanted to say, I'm not sure that everyone even understands what we're talking about, is that Capital One is engaging in a merger, and to offset that merger, they developed the largest community benefits agreement ever at $265 billion. And they enlisted more voices and brought more groups to the table than had ever been done before. And they negotiated it with 4 negotiators. 3 out of 4 happen to be Latino-led organizations. 2 of those are on the stage right now. So that's really sort of like I just wanted to sort of elevate that point, because I thought we sort of just sort of hit the ground running and didn't necessarily touch on that. But it's a momentous occasion that deserves to be
No,
celebrated.
and that's why this is not. This is not a silver bullet, but it's an incredible opportunity and innovative solution to find ways to get into communities and to get to some of that access to capital. So I encourage everybody to look at public-private partnerships and how you can take advantage of those. And there's others in this room that have been involved with that. I'd like to sort of close it off by asking each of you to talk a little bit about, with, again, the changing political climate, what's in the horizon, what is in the horizon, given all that, for you all's, organizations. I'll start with you, Horacio.
But I think one of the things that I'm going to be looking forward to seeing is who's in this for real. This is going to be a shakeout for the people that have been faking it because it's the right thing to do after the murder of George Floyd and COVID, health disparities, all that stuff. It's like everybody had commercials on TV. Everybody, we care so much. And in your back of their mind, like, BS, yeah, right, okay. Well, now we get to find out who does. And I'll be curious to see who that is.
Marla?
Yeah, I will just say, siguiendo en la lucha. That's,
Siguiendo en la lucha.
Nothing changes from one day to the next. We're still doing the same work, whether it's uphill or downhill. So,
Andy, you can't end with what's in your wallet either. So.
And please, what is with Jennifer Garner? Really?
Love Jennifer Gardner. Who doesn't love Jennifer Gardner?
I love her.
So for Capital One, what is the commitment here with everything that's going on?
Yeah, look, I mean, this has been sort of much talked about internally and across the industry. Look, I'm going to echo a little bit of Marla, of your sentiment, which is I can't control the universe. I, by the way, wish I had the latitude to be as candid as Stephanie Rule was earlier. A super entertaining panel, but I don't have that latitude. So I will say, I will say the following, which is that we're in this for the long haul and always have been, and we're not going anywhere. While in the 25 years that I've been at Capital One, this is administration number 6, I think, that I've navigated. And our feelings about this, our commitment to these issues, these areas, and to the advancement of this particular community have been part of that conversation, regardless of who's in power. So I can't control the universe, but I can control small parts of it. And the small parts of it that me and my team can control, we're going to continue to stay focused on all of the things that we've talked about here today.
Thank you very much, Andy. Thank you, Capital One. Thank you to our panelists. Great solutions.
Thank you, Victor.